We're now in the front bedroom of the Sutherlin mansion. We believe that in 1865 this room was used by George and Anna Trenholm. George Trenholm was the Secretary of the Treasury when the Confederate government arrived in Danville, and some people believe he was the richest man in the South at that time. Later in the 19th century, this bedroom was used by the Sutherlin's granddaughter when she came back to the house to give birth to her children. She did deliver the Sutherlin's great-granddaughter, or Janie 4 as we call her, here in this room in 1904. Later she came back in 1907 to give birth to a second child. Sadly, both she and that child died that year. The Mrs. Sutherlin did continue living here for another 4 years. Her great-granddaughter, Janie 4, who was 7 years old at that time, did inherit the house. However, the trustees of Mrs. Sutherlin's will decided it would be best to sell the house, as that Janie 4 was then living in Birmingham, Alabama with her father, who was the publisher of one of the newspapers there. So at that time, the house was purchased by an organization that we will tell you about in just a few moments. But here in this room, I would like to point out Mrs. Aiken's quilt. This is what is known as a crazy quilt. They were quite popular during the latter portion of the 19th century. We do also have additional information about this quilt that was prepared by one of our local historians, Clara Fountain. Now, interestingly enough, there is a depiction of a house here in the center of the quilt, and we believe this to be the Aiken family home, which was on the corner of Main and Floyd Street. That property was then sold to the city, where they constructed one of our previous municipal buildings. Then in the 1920s, the city sold that property and the structure on it to the developers of the Danville Hotel. That building was then built in the 1920s on that site and continues to be used to this day as a housing project known as Danville House. Of the furniture we have in here, we only have one piece that we know to be from the period. The armoire or wardrobe here is in the possession of the Danville Historical Society and has been loaned to the museum.